Hi everyone, it's Monique again, and today we are going to just hop right in to the psychosocial development of young adulthood. So as I mentioned before, it is a social construct, and so what we're talking about is typically between the ages like 20-ish to 44. Those are the parameters that your course material uses. So when we jump in, we're going to talk about the pathways to adulthood, right? How do we define adulthood? How do we get there, right? So it's interesting because your book actually defines it as by three methods. And I want you to think about these because I look at these and I'm like, huh? I've never used these, right? I kind of fell outside of those. But I mean, and I believe that so many of us, in particular in a city, grow up with a certain neighborhood, we probably do fall outside of this. But here we go. The first one is they begin a family early and don't go to college, okay? Second one is delay children, but strive to achieve their careers and their goals and stuff like that. The third one is delay children, but pursue educational goals. So again, this is when I want you to put on your own thinking cap and think about whether or not that makes sense, whether or not it applies to you, whether or not it applies to the majority of people that you know, and why or why not. So, as young adults leave home, they must redefine their relationship with their parents. But many young adults are still living at home. Why is that? I mean, duh, rent's expensive, life is expensive, we know that, right? Or either when they leave home and come back home, right? Leave home and come back home. It's expensive out there, and we know that. So, it's just important to know that those relationships with those parents, they have to be redefined because you have to be looked at in a different light than this child who's living underneath their parents' roof, right? Now your relationship is shifting. Now things are looking a little different. I'm going to talk for a minute about intimate relationships. They require a certain self-awareness, empathy, and certain interpersonal skills that are super important, such as communications, particularly communicating emotions and being aware of those emotions. Conflict resolution is a big one. If you can't solve problems, your intimate relationships are probably going to be trash, right? So, also the ability to sustain commitments, which I can honestly say I am not the best at. I will make plans and cancel them. Sorry. Let me see what else. If it is a sexual relationship, then it needs to have certain sexual decision making, so that everything's mutual and everybody is aware of what's going on. Consent, right? We know that's important. So friendships typically at this age, they center on work, parenting, sharing, and also advice. And there's also something known as fictive kin, and I've mentioned this in each and every one of my classes, that person who comes in the house and goes straight in the fridge, and you're like, what? Right? Or that person who just, you don't even have to be home and they're home, and they're not necessarily your family members, but they are so close that you see them as family. That is called fictive kin, right? So that best friend, right? Social networking can interfere with the quality of friendships, but it's also really, really good because they keep people connected, right? And that works well with people who are traditionally isolated, right? Or would be isolated. So it's really, really good for those purposes. Another thing to note is that the average age of the marital age has risen in recent times. So for males, we see them typically get married around age 29, and for females, we typically see around age 28. Okay, cohabitation is also risen, and it's less stable than marriage. And those of you who don't know what cohabitation is, it's living with someone unmarried. Typically it is a partner, and for the sake of this class and the way your book defines it, it's a partner who you're sharing intimate and possibly even sexual relationships with. Or like my mother likes to say, playhouse, right? So there is a greater acceptance of various non-binary sexual orientations. And so who am I talking about when I'm talking about non-binary sexual orientations? Remember before we spoke about LGBTQIAP plus orientations? Those are who I'm talking about. And it's interesting because we were just talking about in the last 2 lectures ago how, when we were talking about adolescence, how you see older adults not necessarily as willing to accept non-binary sexual orientations, but it looks like it's evolving, right? As we're getting older and as the times are changing, things are evolving. So it's just interesting to note. What I will say is that most non-binary sexual orientations, they do mirror heterosexual relationships, but there are slight differences. So one of the differences that we see is that there are better household chore division. Like, no one's arguing over who's taking out the trash and who's, I don't know, changing the baby's diaper, right? Because ultimately, not everybody fits into that box, right? Where guys take out the trash, girls do the diapers, right? It's way more fluid, and so things work a little smoother. Another thing that you see a lot better I guess I could use the word better, in those relationships are better conflict resolution skills, okay? However, these relationships, even though they have all these great things that kind of factors, they kind of put them above, they still struggle, and they're still at risk for breaking up because of the lack of institutional support. Now, what am I talking about when I'm talking about institutional support? I'm talking about even like I can call up and say, hey, listen, furniture store, you ruined my order. Oh, what's my order number? Oh, it's under my husband's name. Oh, whatever. And I will get serviced, right? Without a problem. I don't have to deal with discrimination. I don't have to deal with, wait, what are you talking about? No, I need to speak to this person. There's a lot of that goes on, but then there's also lack of institutional support, such as, if somebody, like, goodness forbid, your partner passes away and you're trying to get that documentation in order. Oh my goodness. Oh, what a process. Getting that documentation in order to prove that you are next of kin, to prove that you can just simply swipe their debit card or take care of their health care or whatever it is, right? It's so much. And even another thing that we spoke about, remember when we were talking about adolescence and how there was lack of family support and things like that a lot of times for in friendships and things like that for children who are in these communities. But even like those type of supports that we're trying to get, like DV is a little more open, at least in our state it is, but like getting some domestic violence help, or certain types of, assistance is provided, even government assistance is a little more difficult, okay? Also, when highlighting marital satisfaction, it's important to note that married people tend to be the happiest. And then next from then, moving down the list, is unmarried people and divorced people. And divorced people typically will stay married for about 7 to 8 years before actually getting separated. And then at the bottom are people who are in unhappy marriages, right? Because, think about it, it's daunting. So that's kind of the way that those go. Also, you typically see fewer children like being produced from marriages and relationships in industrialized country, which may speak to, it can speak to anything. It can speak to people wanting to follow their dreams. It can speak to people being infertile and not wanting to move forward in certain ways. It can speak to all types of things. So that's something for you guys to think about. So that wraps up this lecture for young adulthood. Again, if you guys have any questions, always reach out to me. Please reach out to me directly. And I'm going to highlight this one more time because I know you guys might be asked about this, right? 3 criteria that most people use to define adulthood are accepting responsibility for yourself, making independent decisions, and becoming financially independent. So just keep that in the back of your mind. All right. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Bye, guys.